like we talked about, that this series is called Plot Twists. And what I know about myself, and I'm going to guess about you, is that a good plot twist in a movie or a book makes a movie or a book much better. Now, I'm going to give some spoiler alerts to some old movies. If you think about Emperor Strikes Back, Darth Vader in real life, when we experience those in our personal life, I no longer like plot twists. I no longer like them. When something happens to us, it could be at work, it could be a relationship, it could be something of a financial thing, it could be even when you have a plan and it rains. It's a plot twist, right? And you got to figure out what, I was going to be outside and now I'm not. So plot twists are awesome in movies and books and in someone else's life. But we all know that if we are honest, each of us have had plot twists in our own life. Things that have happened, we had a plan, and if we're also honest, we can look back and we can see God's hand at work throughout that plot twist. We didn't like it. There are plot twists in my life that I never want to go through ever again. But I can see what now kind of what God is doing, and some of them I'm like, God, I have no idea where you were or what you're doing, and I still don't. You might ask the question, why are we talking about this? And so if you want to join me in Genesis 37. Genesis is the first book of your Bible. We're going to be hanging out in the next 5 weeks looking in the book of Genesis. So Genesis 37, we're going to be talking about a guy named Joseph. And Joseph, now this is not Mary and Joseph, Jesus' dad. This is Joseph in Genesis, so don't be confusing the name on that. And we're going to jump in this conversation, and what we're going to see is, we're going to see that some crazy things happened to Joseph. Some crazy things. Things that you're like, oh, that's not fair. Like, where is God in that part of the story? And my prayer and my hope as we walk through this, we have the benefit of having the whole story. So you can read the rest of Genesis and find out what happens in the end. But I want us to think about what would life have been like for Joseph as he's walking through these things. And I also want, as we go through this, I want you to kind of look for God's hand in some of these things that are happening. So, because I think that'll help us be able to see in our lives where God is working and doing, or maybe even look back at what has happened, what God is working and doing. But one thing that I also know is that Genesis, I had you open to Genesis 37, right? So what does that mean? That means there are 36 chapters before this. So we're going to read all 36 chapters. You think I'm kidding? I am. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a summary. Can we do that? Can we do a quick summary to kind of catch us up on Genesis? So we find in Genesis 1 and 2, we see creation. We see that God, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So the skies and the earth and all that is in it, we see that in 6 days, he takes chaos and he brings order to it. He brings the sun and the moon and the stars. He brings the sky and the land and the water. And yes, I know that's out of order, so don't yell at me. You can talk about it later to me. On day 6, we have animals and we have humanity. Humanity is, each day he says it's good, it's good, it's good. Day 6, he makes humanity in his image, and he says very good. Day 7, he rests. So we see creation happen, and then in chapter 2, we get a kind of a sneak peek into Adam and Eve being placed in the Garden of Eden, and how they're placed to rule and reign with God as they take over and garden with the garden that's there, and take care of the animals and enjoy life and walk with God. That's not crazy? Okay, so that happens to you all the time. Okay, great. So they walk with God in the cool of the day. And then we get to chapter 3. In chapter 3, we see that Adam and Eve were given one kind of rule of things not to do. And they were not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And we see here that there's a serpent that we often call Satan or the devil, and tempts Eve, saying, did God really say not to eat this? Did God really say that you're going to die? So they start questioning God, and they end up eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, which is rebellion against God, and what it does is it makes us try to be God, for us to decide and set what is right and wrong, as opposed to trusting God, who is God, of what is right and wrong. And we have been in this spiral ever since. In this rebellion, we have part of our fighting that we do all the time is because I'm right and you're wrong. Well, who set that? Because we're trying to be God, and the serpent, did God really say, you'll be like God if you do this? But we already were. We're made in the image of God, but we have our hearts bent now away from God in the rebellion that happened. And you can see from Genesis 3 to Genesis 11 a spiral that happens out. Where over and over and over again, there's a spiral as God's people, as humanity walks away from God, as they choose different ways to rebel against God, which culminates in the Tower of Babel, and you're welcome to read that in chapter 11. Then we get to chapter 12, and instead of seeing all of humanity, it zooms now into Abraham. Some of you remember Sunday school? Father Abraham, many sons had father. Okay, great. So God makes a promise to Abraham and says, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and I will be and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. Whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So we see now God is he's making a covenant. The covenant is a promise with action. That he's promising Abraham that your family is going to be you're going to be many descendants, going to be a great nation, and I'm going to give you land, and I'm going to bless you so that you can bless the world, so that the world will see who God is through your family, through who you are. That gets passed on to Isaac, his son. Isaac has two sons, Jacob and Esau, and you can go through that rivalry fun. That was a debacle. And so this promise is passed on to Isaac, and then it's passed on to Jacob. Jacob's name then gets changed to Israel. And welcome, we are into chapter 37. That was better than reading all 36 chapters, wasn't it? Okay. You're welcome. But it's important for us when we read the Bible to remember context. Because context is important, because you can pull anything out, but not knowing what the author was trying to get at, or what the author is trying to point at, or what God's heart is in and through the whole thing. So it's important for us to know what's going on. So if you are with me, we're going to jump into Genesis 37. Verses 1 and 2 kind of set the scene for us. Jacob lived where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. So we're into Jacob now. So his youngest son, Joseph, a young man of how old? 17. I want you to keep that in mind, because when you were 17, you made all the right decisions and said all the right things. And those of you who are 17 or near 17, always do this too, and know what is better than everybody else. And we're going to see Joseph in the same light. So, young man of 17 was tending the flocks. We find he was a shepherd with his brothers, and you can see the sons of those two ladies, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. So Joseph brings a bad report about his brothers. He's 12th. 11 brothers, brings a bad report. That goes well, doesn't it? Always goes well when the younger sibling tells on the older siblings. Always goes well. So we see, so that kind of sets the scene for us as we jump into verse 3. Now Israel, remember I told you Jacob's name got changed to Israel. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. That always goes well, too. So now we've got the 17-year-old telling on his older brothers, and now we find out he is the favorite. Because he was born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. Some of your translations say a coat of many colors. Some is an ornate robe. What we know about this thing is it was fancy. Was it like the Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat colors of the musical? Probably not. Do we know what it really looked like? No. Do I have a picture in my head because a flannel graph of what it looks like? Yes, I do. What's important to know about this robe is it is a special robe. It symbolized that he's my favorite. It showed the whole family and everybody else that I like him best. That's why he got the special robe. That's what the author is trying to point out to us. In verse 4, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Family's fun, isn't it? Now, Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. Okay? Well, what was this dream that our 17-year-old Joseph told his other brothers who already don't like him? And you're going to see why they didn't like it. Verse 6, he said to them, so Joseph said to his brothers, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Well, your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. What can go wrong? His brothers said to him, do you intend to rule over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. And some of you are like, Joseph, you deserve to not be liked by your family. Like, who tells their brothers, by the way, I had this dream, and you're going to bow down to me? I think there's something important that we can find in this passage that's helpful for us. If you're taking the notes in the back of your bullets in there, that unchecked pride and jealousy will poison relationships. Unchecked pride and jealousy. What we see pride in Joseph. Why? Because you're all going to bow down to me. Because I'm the chosen one. I got the robe. And then we see jealousy in the brothers who hated him because he was the favorite one. And what you and I both know is that the relationships that have broken in our life throughout our life, we can probably point back to one of those that poisoned the relationship at some point. It could have been from your end or it could have been from their end. But pride and jealousy will poison a relationship to where it sucks the life out of it. Because you no longer care about the other person. And if you are in a relationship where someone else is having this problem, you get it. Like you see it and you're like, this is not healthy, it's not good. What do I do with this? And so the reason why I bring this up, because I think it points out here in this passage of what relationships look like, and it's important for us to know this. If you read on in verses 9 through 11, Joseph shares another dream. And in this dream, you'll see stars and moons and the sun. And in this dream, not only do his brothers bow down, but his parents bow down to him. So now we have a Joseph who is sharing with his brothers two dreams that he has, that they're going to bow down to him. We're going to see that God uses that in some pretty amazing ways. But we also see where jealousy and pride can stay dormant, where it can stay kind of hidden for a while, and how that eats away at us. But it'll always come out in the relationship. So, if you want to jump down with me to verse 18. Verse 18 says this. Well, I should probably give some context for that. Jacob, the dad, sends Joseph to go check on his brothers. We already know that the brothers can get into some things. We don't know what the bad report was, whether they were kicking the sheep, or if they were throwing things, or if they had girls over. Who knows what they were all doing? But obviously things weren't trusted, so Joseph got sent out, and he went to the place where they should have been, but guess what? They weren't there. So he got sent over to another place to check on their brothers while they were watching their sheep. And in verse 18 says this, "But the brothers saw Joseph in the distance before he reached them, and they plotted to kill him." It's a good family. Good, solid, loving family. "Here comes that dreamer," the brothers say to each other. "Come now, let's kill him. Throw him into one of those cisterns," that's a well that's dried up, "and say that the ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of that dreamer." Comes of his dreams. When Reuben, the oldest, heard this, he tried to rescue Joseph from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Let's be reasonable. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said, so this would rescue him and then take him back to his father. So he thought, if you throw him in the cistern, I'll come back later, I'll take him home, and it'll be fine. So what we find out in verse 23, so when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe that he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty, and there was no water in it. So they're chill in the desert, and they throw him in the cistern. A big hole. As they sat down to eat their meal, as they're just chilling, having lunch, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices and balm and myrrh. And they're on their way to take them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill him and cover his blood?" So they have a better idea. Instead of killing him, let's sell him. It's always a better option, right? "Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother." It's kind-hearted. Let's not kill him. He is our brother after all. Let's just sell him. He is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. That's always a good sign. So when the Ishmaelite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up from the cistern, sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. Joseph woke up in the morning. Part of his day was to go check on his brothers. He ends his day sold into slavery, headed to Egypt. Do you know what I don't see in this passage? Where's God at? There's no angel chilling down in the cistern with him saying, "Joseph, it's going to be okay, dude. Like I have it figured out. In the end, it's going to turn out awesome." And you're going to be amazed at what happens. There's no like God opportunity where God is we don't see that anywhere in here. But as we read the story, we see it all over the place. But what we need to remember is that dark twists can make God feel distant. When we have dark plot twists happen in our life, it can make God feel very distant. We feel like God may have abandoned us. We feel like God doesn't care about us anymore. We feel like God may have other things to do that are more important than us. And I would imagine, we don't know this. This is just me just reading into this. I wonder, what is Joseph feeling about God right now? Because if you're like me and you grew up in church, you heard this story before, you're like, yeah, we know how it ends, and it's... But in this point in the story, it's gut-wrenching. He woke up to his brothers, and all of a sudden now he's sold. He doesn't know what's going to happen. And some of you are sitting in a place right now where life feels dark and God feels very distant. And we need to remember that God is still present in this darkness. And I also want us to know that it is okay to not be happy where you are. The book of Psalms, over a third of it are what are called laments. Laments are crying out to God. God, how long? How long do I have to be in this place? I don't like it. It's not fair. But each of the laments, as they cry out to God, and they are honest. Some of them I'm like, can you say that in the Bible? But each of them are anchored to God. I don't like this, and I'm voicing this to you, but I trust that you are God and I am not. And can I encourage you to lament if you're going through a dark time? Can I encourage you to remember that you're not weak for lamenting? That it actually helps build your relationship with God in that? That as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that He is with us? So may it not be, I'm just going to pick up, I'm just going to do it, but may we trust in God. May that be part of the journey, but may we not stay there. And then there's this fascinating verse at the end of verse 37. It says, meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. It's fascinating how it just ends that way. And just so you know, over the next 5 weeks, we're going to leave on cliffhangers. Speaking of plot twists, if you want to go and read ahead, just know that chapter 38 is a plot twist too of the family, but know that that's more of a PG-13 chapter, so just beware of that. And then Joseph picks back up in verse 39, or chapter 39. So just be aware of that in what's going on in that. So God is moving all throughout this, and we're going to see next week how Joseph heading to Egypt, God had a plan moving in and through that as we sit here right now in Joseph's story, we have no idea about it. So I want us to remember that God is present in the pit, not just on the peaks. God is present with us in the pit when life feels dark, when life feels hopeless, when we have been betrayed, when we get that phone call about a health situation, when the unemployment happens because you lost your job, when the relationship with your family that you thought was here turns out to be over here and you feel completely and utterly abandoned. God is still present in that story. The same way that God is present on like the high mountaintops when we're praising God and God is awesome and all the good things, he is still present with us in the pit. So don't take God's silence as his abandonment. Don't take God's silence as his abandonment. God is moving in ways that if we were told, we wouldn't believe. That's why we have the story to look back and to see God's faithfulness as we walk through our life, and we can trust that, God, I don't know what is happening here, but I know you're faithful here, and I know you're going to be faithful there. So our bottom line is this. When your plot twists, remember God hasn't left the story. When your plot twists, because it will, and if it hasn't lately, it will. And can I encourage you today to pre-decide to remember that God hasn't left the story when your plot twists? When life feels like it has gone upside down, when life feels like it's sideways, can I encourage you to remember that God hasn't left the story? Joseph went from the favorite son, living comfortably in Canaan, and went to sleep as a slave in Egypt. But what I want you to remember, and what we're going to see next week and ongoing in this conversation, that God hasn't left this story. And it is so powerful. And we follow the ultimate plot twist, which is Jesus. God, who put skin on, came down to live a faithful life following God. Who started teaching and having his followers, and then it's like we're reading it, and all of a sudden, what do you mean he got arrested? What do you mean the Son of God got arrested and betrayed by some dude who was part of his disciples? He didn't deserve that. And what do you mean the crowd's going to yell, "Crucify to him"? He didn't deserve to be crucified. Why? And he actually died on the cross. Like he could have pulled down. He died on the cross. Why? For you and for me. And for all the people who live around us. Because God so loved this world that he gave his one only son. And then a crazy, crazy plot twist. Jesus didn't stay in the grave. He rose 3 days later. And is alive and living and ruling today. And we get to follow him in it. And that is so, so exciting. And one day, we look forward to being resurrected with him. It's good stuff. Let's pray together. And then we'll kind of close out our service. Father, I thank you for who you are. I thank you for being a God who's not done with us. I thank you for being a God who knows us. I thank you for being a God who doesn't leave us in the plot twist when we feel like you've abandoned us. May we rest in you. May we cry out to you. And may we anchor our hearts and our minds and our souls and our bodies to your truth. That you are a God who loves us. You are a God who continues to be working. And you're a God who loves us too much to leave us where we are. Thank you for not being done with us. And thank you for the example of Joseph. In this crazy time of this crazy story, that we see your hand working behind the scenes in ways that we read through the story again and we're like, oh, there you are, that we didn't see before. Thank you for working each of our lives, and help us to look for your hand in what you're doing. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. So with